SeizYourBusiness.com podcast with Tony Rourke and Kevin O'Flaherty.
SeizYourBusiness.com, making you money.
Share it on Facebook, share it on LinkedIn,
Twitter, our blogs, YouTube, video, listen to our podcast. It's so hot that it's burning up the stereo.
Welcome to the SeizYourBusiness.com podcast, coming to you from our speakeasy in lovely downtown Downers Grove, Illinois. Today, our guest is Troy Golden from SC Group Real Estate. Our hosts are Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law and myself, Tony Rourke from ADR Business Resource Group. If you find this podcast helpful, or if you just want to help us out, we would appreciate if you would review us on iTunes and or share our podcast on social media. So without further ado, I'll hand this off to Kevin.
Hi, Troy. Thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about your business and what you do, and also touch on your past experience in the political realm, too.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I am a commercial real estate broker. I specialize in office space in the western suburbs, and primarily most of what I do is tenant representation. What that means in effect is I help business owners find space, and I help them find space for their businesses and then negotiate lease and purchase agreements. If someone's never used someone like me, the analogy I use is I am like a buyer's broker for a house, except for a business. I specialize in the western suburbs of Chicago, but my firm, SC Group Real Estate, covers all Chicagoland. And although I specialize in office space, my firm covers all property types in Chicagoland. And although I specialize in tenant representation, my firm covers or represents landlords who are looking to lease space or purchase property for investment purposes. So my firm can help anyone in Chicagoland, but the brokers at my firm, like me, specialize in a property type, a submarket Chicagoland, and then either tenant representation or helping out the landlord. So just to give an example, let's say your law firm, Kevin, is looking to open up a new branch location somewhere in the western suburbs of Chicago. You would meet with someone like me. You tell me what your search requirements are. I'd come back with several spaces which I think meet those requirements. We would tour the spaces, whittle down the list to 2 or 3 that fit your requirements really well, and then we would start a bidding war between the landlords and then get the best deal for your firm.
And I was your first closed client, right?
That's true, you were.
You tell that to all the guys?
I tell it. No, just you, Kevin.
You've got one of the cooler resumes of anyone we've had on this show. So you went to Yale, right?
Yes, that's true. I did go to Yale. I grew up in the South, North Carolina. At 18, I went up north to Yale. Graduated with a degree in psychology, but without any real practical skills other than knowing how to read and write and maybe solve a few problems. So I went to politics and worked on political campaigns for a few years. Started out as a volunteer and kind of worked my way up on several political campaigns across the country, Northern Virginia, New Jersey, went to Midwest for a while, then back to North Carolina. Ended up managing a race in North Carolina. Kind of aged out of the system by my mid-20s, and at that point I was introduced to real estate because my candidate in North Carolina, he was a real estate developer. And I decided to go back to school, get my MBA at the University of Wisconsin, which has a real estate finance program there. So I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, met my wife, graduated, and met my managing broker, Steve Stoner. He recruited me, brought me up here, and now I'm working with Steve Stoner at SC Group Real Estate. And I've been here since 2011, just learning the western suburbs really well, specializing in tenant representation and in office space.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Any big name campaigns that you ever worked on?
I worked for a independent expenditure group that was indirectly involved in the Obama race.
Okay.
But we were not coordinated with that race.
Okay. All right. Got it.
But all of my races were local level, state legislative races.
Okay.
You know, when you see an issue related ad, you know how there's organizations now that raise unlimited amounts of money
Sure.
and then flood the airwaves
Oh, yeah.
with that money. I worked for one of those groups.
Okay.
But most of the time, I worked for a guy running for state legislative, state senate, state house. You shouldn't have heard of any of these guys unless you were weird, to be honest.
Weird.
Yeah. That's kind of where, if you're running a campaign in an off year, you work in those races.
Okay.
So that's where the professional political class ends up working.
So before we move on to our topic, which is going to be relationship-based sales, we usually like to ask our guests a couple of lessons that they've learned
Sure.
in their years of experience in business, and something that they would pass on to their younger selves.
Okay. Well, in North Carolina, I learned to not discount anyone based on appearance, because a lot of the people we were raising money from looked like I couldn't tell who was rich and who was poor. I was running a race in eastern North Carolina, which was, for lack of a better word,
Careful. I'm from South Carolina. Be careful.
we were in an area that was rural, and rich guys would wear wife beaters and shorts, and they would look to me like someone on an episode of Cops. So sometimes someone would stroll into the campaign office, and my first reaction would be to act as if I need to escort this person out, but it would turn out that this person was there to drop off a large check. So I learned to treat everyone as a potential campaign donor or a potential client. That was a lesson. Another one was just this. It's hard to. I developed my ability to deal with rejection on the campaign trail.
That's important in sales.
Yeah, it's very important in sales. In New Jersey, I would make phone calls for a candidate at night. You know when
Oof.
you get those phone calls.
Yeah. Ooh.
New Jersey, in the best of times, has a certain reputation for honesty, maybe speaking the truth when people say what they mean when they're upset with you. And I was in politics, and I was calling people during dinner. So I had people say terrible, terrible things to me. Now I'm in a business where I make phone calls all the time. People call them cold calls. But I'm in the Midwest. I'm talking to a receptionist, and sometimes a receptionist will be a little bit terse with me, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was.
So you got a little bit of a thick skin
Yeah.
in New Jersey politics.
That's good. So actually, Scott, one of the things that we've been hearing is to fail fast.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about that is just like, just get rejected quick. Just
Yeah.
get it out of the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was, I mean, it was a very painful time in my life, but I'm glad I went through it
Mhm.
because it just makes sales now so much easier by contrast.
Sure.
So let's talk about your topic. You wanted to discuss your sales system, your
Yeah.
relationship-based sales system. Tell us what your strategies are.
Sure. Well, one of the things that was drilled into me over and over again as I was coming up through the system is that good data is the foundation in politics of a good field system. Meaning, if you want to win a campaign, you have to find out who your voters are. You find out what they care about, find out where they are, you find out how to contact them, and then you deliver them to the polls on election day. Sales is really similar. When I got here in May 2011, the first thing I did was begin to put together a database, very similar to the databases I built as a campaign manager. As a campaign manager, you have a database of all the voters in the district, and then you just start saying, okay, these guys you'll never get, these guys you may get, and these guys you already have. And this is their email, this is their phone, these are the issues they care about. And it's not complicated, it's just hard. It just requires a lot of man hours. And so when the sales, it was very intuitive for me just to do the same thing. I walked through every single building in my territory, the western suburbs, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to specialize in middle market businesses because ones that are too small, I don't care about. Ones that are too big, I'll never get. At least not now.
Mm-hmm.
And also because they're looking for national or international brokers. So I'm going to go for guys in the middle. So I walked through every single building in my territory and wrote down every single middle market business using Office Space and created a database of them. Then I called every single prospect, and I started out with 3,500. Then I called every single one and found out the decision maker at every single prospect. And during the process, I would eliminate some because some would say, well, my brother is a broker, or actually, you're wrong. We're not a middle market company. This is a branch location of an international company.
Okay.
And some, they were out of business, and I just couldn't tell. So I whittled it down to 3,000. And I've been cultivating this database for the last 4 years, just in the same way that I would during a campaign. It's just an ongoing campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a difficult concept. It just requires discipline. So I guess the main thing I want to drill down here is that having a systematic approach to data, that's the foundation of any good sales system. Then the next step is also very similar to managing a campaign. Is once you have the people that you want to talk to, and ideally you have several ways to contact them, a mailing address, a phone, and an email, then you start contacting them in a systematic way. So as a campaign manager, we would have a plan to hit people through the mail with direct mail pieces, through email, and then through the phones. And we would map out ahead of time. We'd say, okay, well, the election day is 24 months from now. So between here and then, we're going to hit them with mail pieces on these dates, and we would map out what each mail piece would say. On the phone, we will make phone calls, this many phone calls to hit them this many times, and we'll talk about these subjects. And same with email. I do the same thing. I don't have an end date because it's an ongoing campaign,
Sure.
But I do have mail plans, I have email plans, and I have phone plans. And I track, just like in a campaign, you track who says what in your database and then alter the message accordingly. So if someone says in a campaign that they care about environmental issues, and then you start sending them environmental pieces, in sales, if someone tells me their lease expires in 2019, I make a note of that in my system, and then I make sure to call them 2018 about their expiring lease. Or if I find out that the asking rent has increased in their building, I send out an email to everyone in that building notifying them of the change in the market. So anytime you find out a change relevant to that specific account or the market, you take advantage of the good data that you created and then act accordingly.
Well, that's what's so interesting, being a technologist. Um, man, data is paramount, huh?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Really interesting.
And that's something that's different from a lot of the guests we've talked to.
Absolutely.
Most of the people we talk to, it's about, networking and building referral partners. And I believe that they're both necessary, but this is a different approach than we've heard on the show. We haven't heard straight sales, so I appreciate your insight on that.
It's interesting you talk about networking groups because that's kind of the final piece in the puzzle. Just like in a campaign, you have events. When I first came here, I wanted to have events too. So I started out organizing, or it was just kind of intuitive to me to organize a networking group. And Kevin does the same thing. I think it's important to organize events because you get a lot more value from events that you organize rather than just attending events. And over the last couple of years, I developed certain theories about networking events and strategies. Personally, I'm now I'm doing a poker game, a recurring networking coffee, and then 2 networking lunches. And for 2 of these groups, they are targeted towards people in my database.
Okay.
So people that I think will be clients. And then 2 of them are open to everyone. And then all 4 of them, 1 occurs in the morning, 2 occur midday, and 1 occurs in the evening. 1 is kind of, or a couple of them, 3, I guess, out of the 4 are just explicitly networking, and then the 4th, the poker game, is kind of friendly, not explicitly networking. And I feel like through this mix of groups, I can bring in everyone, both people that I know are prospects, and then people that are not direct prospects, sales people, but are indirect prospects. And I think having a mix in both time and activity is important. It's hard to do though, because I now have a group. I have 4 different groups going on, and it requires a lot of logistical.
I was going to ask you how many hours you think you might put in an average week to manage the different groups that you're putting on. I mean, you're putting on these events. So what kind of?
Probably 10 hours a month.
Oh, okay. So that's not bad.
Most people would take longer. And this is now that they're all on autopilot. In order to be efficient at it, you need to use Outlook and have mailing lists and have a system of recurring tasks to remind you to do everything and really just be on autopilot. But what most people could do is just start one and, just take it from there.
Would you suggest to somebody, if somebody was going to start a networking event, would you suggest that they start fun or serious? Because a luncheon, that's going to be a little bit more serious, where poker night is a lot more fun.
It's never fun for you though.
But which one? But taking you out of the equation,
Yeah.
which one do you think is actually going to give a bigger bang for a buck?
Fun
Fun.
is a lot more popular. Poker game, like Kevin does too. I mean, I couldn't do it without Kevin. Fun is more popular, but you should take on a partner because since it's more popular, it's gonna be a lot more work. Like I couldn't do the poker game without Kevin. It's not just
In terms of logistics, or
in terms of logistics. It's not just being modest. It's just literally I couldn't do it without Kevin.
Troy's right when he says it's not really fun for you because there's a lot of I end up buying the beer and getting the food and getting the space ready.
Yeah.
Troy makes sure everyone knows the rules and sends out the mailers, and it's a lot more helpful. It's a lot easier than running one of those things on your own. And there's nothing wrong with having a partner in groups like that because you're building that relationship with your partner too, and you're getting exposed to both of your bases. So that's the biggest way that Troy and I work together is kind of partnering and putting on events. And it's since we started doing that, it's made my life a lot easier. I know that.
It's probably better to do it with a partner than doing it by yourself for any networking group, all things being equal.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I do want to drive home is that once we started, doing events where we're crossing over our client bases, I've met a lot of people that are good contacts for me because we're both inviting people rather than just reinforcing my existing contacts.
Dan Lowe, he referred a client to me yesterday, and I met him through the poker game, and he's your. I met him through you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's the financial advisor we work with.
So it's working.
Go ahead, Tony.
Do you guys, and this is to both of you because both of you do this a lot and very well, and so I'm just curious. How do you? I don't even know. It's one of those questions. I don't even know what question to ask. You ever get in one of those moments? You got a question. It's rolling up in there. I just don't know what to ask. How do you foster this cross relationship? I mean, you got your relationships. You have your relationships. Does the fostering the cross relationship end at the networking event, or do you guys do anything else to introduce people to other people?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have do you send out an email? Do you send out an email for him if one of your guys needs help with this or help with that, or is it vice versa? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Well, we're in industries that I need Kevin's services. My clients need Kevin's services fairly frequently I tell all my clients to retain an attorney when they're presented with a contract.
Okay, sure.
A lease contract or a purchase contract. And oftentimes they have their own attorney, but when they don't, then I send them over to Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
So that keeps us in contact. Maybe even if we weren't doing the networking event, I'd say it kind of gives me a reason to call him once a year or more. And now this poker game thing is we see each other every month, and then it just seems like I don't know. I just run into you. I can't avoid
you. We were power partners and friends before we started doing the networking group stuff together.
Okay.
But doing the networking group stuff together and running the poker night together just kind of reinforces that. And for me, that's the whole purpose of those groups. Troy uses them in a way that's a little different from mine.
Mm-hmm.
Troy's got a very much more database. These are potential clients he wants to bring. For me, it's people who are power partners that I want to reinforce relationships with. And you can accomplish both. And I've got clients and potential clients that have come, but it's having that recurring group meeting gives you it plugs these people into your universe where you get to see them on a regular basis. And when they think, hey, I need an attorney, they just saw me last month and the month before, and we've become friends.
Gotcha.
It's a lot easier to do it that way and have it automated and systematized when you're going to see these people that you want to see than to do the traditional sales method of saying, I'm going to follow up with this person every 6 weeks and schedule a lunch with them. That works, but it's a lot more time.
Yeah.
Because you've got to do lunches with a bunch of separate people as opposed to a lunch with.
Just do it all in one shot.
Right.
How many people do you send out the invite to for the poker night?
I think there's probably about 150 people on the list.
And you get what?
But Kevin
20?
also sends out.
I send it out to about 1,200 people.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one I went, it seemed
We
like
get
there's
about 20 people.
20, 30 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a rotating cast. There's a lot of people that come
Consistently,
and there's a lot of people that rotate in and out. But
okay.
I know that poker game evolved from a high school poker game that I used to have with my high school friends, and just started bringing my professional friends into it. And it turned out to be, a great thing for the business. And when I started not being consistent about scheduling them, Troy approached me and he's like, Kevin, these poker games are a great idea. You've got to, I want to help you logistically get this done, because I'd get busy with the business and think, oh yeah, I don't have time to deal with
it. Get to that later.
Yeah, right.
Later never comes.
But it's much more effective when, when I see people in the street, they say, hey, I heard about your poker night. I'm going to make it to one of these. And you know exactly when the next one's going to be.
Well, I have to give you props for it, because it's a fun time. And I don't even play poker. I had a great time.
It is fun. Yeah. And it gives you an excuse also, because for some of my networking groups, people don't come, but it gives you an excuse to send them an email.
Mm-hmm.
So, or to call people. People are more likely to take your calls. I make a lot of phone calls. No one wants to take them. They're in a networking group with you.
How many calls are you making a week, you think?
No,
not you
probably.
think. You have the data. I know you have the data. How many calls are you making a week on average?
I know time. I don't know the number, but I try to do 6 to 9 hours of calling. It probably adds up to about 150 calls.
Okay.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, that is.
Troy touched on something that's really important too, the excuse to reach out to people. Everyone would like to send a weekly email newsletter just to get their name in someone's inbox, but that's invasive. People don't really like that very much. But if you've got a weekly event that you're inviting people to, it's not invasive to send out an email every week saying, hey, I've got this event, I'd like you to come. And if it's a fun-based event, like our evenings at the speakeasy or happy hours at the speakeasy or poker, it's not, people usually don't get too upset about getting that email. And and you're being a magnetic, dynamic person that they want to be in touch with, because you've got so much going on. So that's the big, even if I didn't get any business directly from people who came to the poker night, and I just had an excuse to reach out to my entire database of people every week without being invasive, that would be worth it.
So you're just trying to get people into the Kevin vortex as much as you can.
Trying to plug people into my universe. That's right.
Yeah. Come up to my vortex.
That's something I struggled with starting out, because I knew I had to go and meet people and grab coffees and beers with them, and after a while people would fall off my radar if they weren't in my vortex.
Yes.
So, but if they're coming to my events and or if they're a member of a recurring group that I'm in, whether it's a leads group or a chamber of commerce, I don't have to expend any effort to maintain my relationship.
It's very systematic.
Everything
I like
should
it.
be in
I
this.
like it, guys.
Well, and the thing I take away from what you were saying, Troy, is that you do the networking just like everyone else does, but you've got it much more data driven, and you're targeting qualified leads, and you do the work on the front end to get the people that you're inviting and spending your time on to be the right people, because it's really easy when you're networking to just waste a ton of your time. It's never a waste getting to know somebody, but talking to people who aren't really qualified referral sources or potential clients.
I think it's possible to, if you just do what I do, then you neglect other potential contacts. I think if possible, or you've converted me to your system also. I think if you can have more than one networking group, you should have. If you can have a second networking group, you should do what Kevin does, and that you should just try to get as many people as possible and don't exclude anyone. I think there's a role for both.
Sure.
There's a role for randomness, because you can't possibly predict who will send you the next lead.
Nope. Nobody's that good.
Yeah.
And it's not if they're coming to a group, it's not a waste of time to meet. It's not like you're spending an hour talking to somebody that you don't think is ever going to get
Right.
you business. They're there, they get to talk to you, and if, like you said earlier, Troy, if you organize the group, then you've got the cachet of being the organizer. And if you might spend 5 minutes talking to them, but you're still fostering that relationship, and you can spend the lion's share of the time talking to people that you think are going to be helpful to your business.
There's also just some degree of self-selection. I mean, if someone comes to a group, they're kind of already qualifying themselves. You know something about them, they're willing to come out to a networking group, and that says something about them.
That means they're going to other networking groups, they know a lot of people, and they can help you out.
Yeah.
Huh. Anything else you want to add, Troy?
I think that's it, except I'm happy to plug my services again one more time.
If somebody wants to reach you, if someone is a tenant looking to buy or get involved in the commercial real estate space, how do they get through to you?
The best way, I always pick up my cell, which is 630-805-2463. If they have your contact information from your website, I'm sure you can forward them on to me. I help people, again, business owners, find space and negotiate lease and purchase agreements. And if I'm not the best person for anyone listening to the show, I know a ton of brokers who cover every property type, every submarket, from golf courses to industrial to airports to whatever. So just I'm happy to answer any real estate questions.
If people are looking for help outside of Chicagoland, are you able to put them in the right direction?
Yes. I know brokers across the country that do everything.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Troy. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.